Peace to all my the people in the house. Gather in, all my people, gather in. This is another public announcement from the United States Private Enterprise Free State. This is a message for all women. This is a message for all women to know what's really and how to save your children, your daughters, from the system that was set up by the opposite sex of you. So, no haters over here. We love our men and we send the love out, but we are here today to get the truth on the record. For those that don't know, now you will know. So, let's get right into the research, my people. And this is research. It's on the record. Everything that's said in this research, in this live right now, that's a public announcement. You can go and find the research. In 1860, Elizabeth Packard disagreed with her husband about religion. He had her committed to an asylum without a hearing. No evidence was presented and no medical evaluation was required. Under Illinois' law, a husband's word was legally sufficient. That word alone could lock his wife away indefinitely. Elizabeth spent 3 years inside the Jacksonville Asylum in Illinois. 3 years locked away from her 6 children at home. When a jury finally heard her case, they deliberated within 7 minutes. And in those 7 minutes, they reached a unanimous verdict that she was sane. She had always been sane, and everyone knew it. So Elizabeth went home to reclaim everything she had lost. When she found what she found, my people, this should really disturb you deeply. The night before her release from the insane asylum, okay, the night before she was released, my people, listen to what I'm saying. Her husband had rented out their house to strangers. He had sold her furniture. He had emptied out her bank accounts, all her bank accounts. He had taken her money, her wardrobe, her notes, and her children. Now, she must have had a fly wardrobe back in 1860 if he took her whole wardrobe. Then he left the state. Elizabeth Packard stood in front of her own home with nothing. And when she tried to fight back through the court system in 1860, my people, she discovered something worse than what her husband had done. She had no legal recourse. In 1860, my people, women had no rights. Under a legal doctrine called coverture, COVTUR, nothing had ever belonged to her. Nothing had ever belonged to any woman in the 1860s and before that age too. Not the furniture, children, everything was property of the man that she married. And those laws, my people, for all the women, doesn't matter. I don't care if you're not listening. I don't care what you got against me. You are property of a man if you are married to a man in this present day, 2026. Go back and read your state laws. Go back and read the law on marriage. So Elizabeth Packard, she did not own the furniture. She did not own her children. She did not own her money. She did not even own the house that was in her name, because the moment she married Theophilus Packard, she took his last name. Her legal existence ceased to be her own. Everything she owned became his property. Every wage she might earn belonged to him. She could not sign a contract. She could not file a lawsuit. She could not write a will without his consent. So women in the 1860s couldn't even write their own will. They could not even create a trust. Everything was done by a man. And this, my people, is planet Earth. Earth is a female planet run by women, always have been run by women until we allowed men to come in. She could not write a will without his consent. And she could be committed to into an insane asylum on his word alone, with no hearing and no right to challenge it. Women had no rights to challenge anything in the 1860s, but they have rights today. Elizabeth Packard's story is not an outliner. It is a case study. It's law. It's on the books. You can go and find the case law on Elizabeth Packard in 1860. And this case study and how the system was designed to work. The system was designed to work for men, evil, demonic men. It doesn't matter the nationality or the color. The men at that time, and you still have evil, demonic men to this day stealing women's property. They now wear women's clothes. Okay? So the sex change thing is they stepping into women's shoes and they're taking over women's property. Okay? Now, the case study and how the system was designed to work, and the document that proves it still exists to this day between October 22nd, 1864 and December 12th, 1889, the West Virginia Hospital for the Insane at Western kept a log book. Okay? It recorded every patient admitted and the reason for their commitment. Historian Marjorie Carr compiled that logbook into a pamphlet in a 1993. It is now archived at the West Virginia Division of Culture and History. It contains 125 reasons you could be locked inside of an insane asylum. Read some of them, my people. Laziness, novel reading, hard study, political excitement, religious enthusiasm, disappointed affection, disappointed love, jealousy, greediness, egotism, bad whiskey, snuff, eating for 2 years, imaginary female trouble, menstrual deranged, domestic trouble. These are just some of the few reasons why women could be committed. Okay, the last one is worth pausing on. The very first patient ever admitted to Western was a housewife. Her recorded reason for commitment was domestic trouble. Think about what the phrase could mean in 1864. It could mean anything. It could mean she argued with her husband. It could mean she was unhappy. It could mean she refused something. The vagueness was the feature, not the flaw, because the more reasons you have to lock someone away, the harder it becomes for anyone to prove they do not belong there. Now, the fair counterpoint, Snopes investigated this list in 2016 and confirmed it was real, but noted an important nuance. These entries were recorded as supposed causes of insanity, not a diagnosis themselves. The physicians in the time even expressed in their own words a little unease with the categories. So the standard explanation is that these were contributing factors, not standalone justifications. That explain is technically correct, and it completely misses the point because the system did not require proof. It didn't require proof to have a woman locked up in an asylum. So you could have men foreign to these women coming on the planet Earth and trying to get their land. So they had to, cozy up to them, do whatever to get the land, and then commit them to an insane asylum. The woman could have had children. They're all females. Now he has a bunch of females. That's his property that he can do whatever. So the system did not require proof. In most states, a husband could walk into an asylum with his wife and have her committed on his testimony alone. No independent medical examination, no hearing before a judge, no legal representation for the person being locked away. The cause recorded in the logbook was whatever the husband said it was. So the real question is not whether novel reading causes insanity. The real question is who benefits when a woman who reads novels can be removed from her home, removed from her family, removed from her land, removed from her house, removed from all of her treasures, and separated from her children. Who benefits when everything she might inherit is stripped away by a man who decides she is inconvenient? And I want you to sit with this. Think about it. Question it. Because once you see this mechanism clearly, the list stops looking absurd. It starts looking comprehensive, deliberately comprehensive, a net wide enough to catch anyone who needed catching. This is where the story gets darker, deeper, and more demonic, my people, because the asylum was not only used against women, but guess what? In 1851, a Louisiana physician named Samuel Cartwright, look him up, delivered a paper to the Medical Association of Louisiana. In it, he identified what he called a new mental illness. This is what they do, my people, a new mental illness. He named it Drapmania, D-R-A-P, mania, combining the Greek words for runaway slave and madness. So now they're locking up the slaves in insane asylums, okay? And woman. The disease, according to Cartwright, was the irrational desire of enslaved people to escape captivity. So, Cartwright is saying that anybody that's trying to escape from captivity had to be crazy. That sounds really fucked up. His reasoning was simple. Slavery was such a benefit to the enslaved that only mental illness could explain wanting to leave it. His prescribed treatment was whipping. For severe cases, he recommended amputating both big toes to make escape physically impossible. That right there, my people, is so highly demonic. Only demons can come up with shit like this, straight up. This apostrophe S review, Dale's Review, one of the most widely circulated publications in the American South. It was not fringe material. It was the chairman of a state medical association committee presenting an annual meeting. And he did not stop there. Cartwright also diagnosed something he called DICIS, dichesthesia, and DICISTHESIA, dichesthesia, and the second word is ATOPICA, athopia, the disease that supposedly caused laziness among enslaved people. The cure was hard outdoor labor under white supervision. This shit sounds so crazy, y'all, because, you know, in America, we were not born slaves. But let's go on. Now, Northern publications mock these diagnoses. Frederick Law Olmsted, the architect who designed Central Park. Now, we know that's some bullshit. We know that these motherfuckers ain't designed no motherfucking Central Park. Now, you can look up his name, Frederick Law. His last name is Olmstead. It's a Frederick Law Olmsted, the architecture who designed Central Park, wrote a satirical response suggesting the disease must be of European origin, since white indentured servants also fled their masters. Okay, so now he's talking about Britain and all of the other indentured servants who came. London and Britain was already here. Okay, so, but here is what unsettles everybody and me. The term DRAOTANIA, draatania, remained in the Stedman's Practical Medical Dictionary through its third edition in 1914. Over 60 years after it was coined, it was still being treated as a legitimate medical term. The joke was on the page, but nobody removed it. After the Civil War ended, the pattern did not stop. It accelerated. The 1840 census had already falsely reported that free Black people in northern states had an insanity rate 10 times greater than enslaved people in the South. Secretary of the State John Calhoun used this fraudulent data to argue that freedom itself was driving Black Americans insane. Now, my people, that sounds really, really fucked up on how they could just throw your ass into an insane asylum and you can't even defend yourself. So, the rights that we have today, my people, cherish them, and you're going to have to keep standing up through your paperwork for your rights. Now, when the war ended and 4 million people were suddenly free, the asylum system was waiting. In 1870, Virginia opened up the Central Lunatic Asylum for colored insane. It was the first institution in the country designated specifically for African American patients. So, if you are labeled an African American and it was on the paperwork, they had the right to come pick your Black African ass up here in the United States. They had the right to come and pick your ass up and throw you in an insane asylum based on your nationality. So why would you claim to be an African American when you were not born in Africa and you have a birth certificate right here in the United States in one of these 50 states? Researchers who have examined its records found no evidence that any patient ever voluntarily committed themselves. Doctors at the facility prescribed hard farm labor as treatment. So, if you were termed crazy, They threw your ass on a farm and gave you slave work. That should make you overcome your craziness. Patients worked the fields and performed domestic chores. If that sounds familiar, it should. The asylum opened 5 years after emancipation, and the treatment looked remarkable, like what had come before it. A large percentage of patients died from the diseases caused by overcrowding. Segregated facilities for Black patients persisted until 1964, and some Virginia institutions remained segregated until 1967. The mechanism was the same. The population changed, the purpose did not. And then there is Canton, Canton. In 1898, Congress authorized the creation of the only federally funded mental institution for Native Americans in the United States. So now they're locking up Native Americans in insane asylums. And it opened up in 1902 in Canton, South Dakota. But it was not built because of the mental health crisis among indigenous people. It was built because two South Dakota congressmen, including Senator Richard Pettigrew, wanted federal jobs and money for their struggling new state. They had to get the state funded, y'all. So they did whatever they had to do to fund their state. So they used American natives, us. The state had been carved directly out of indigenous homelands. All of this was indigenous homelands here in America. Over 30 years, more than 350 Native Americans, us, for over 350 Native Americans from tribes across country were forcibly committed to Canton. The reasons for commitment included refusing to conform to government policies, practicing traditional spiritual ceremonies. They're trying to tell you that you cannot practice your spiritual ceremony when they practiced our ceremonies against us. Yo. And being uncooperative with federal authorities. One man from the Rosebud Reservation was given the diagnosis of horse stealing mania. You see, these niggas just make up shit. No interpreters were provided. No mental evaluations were conducted. No therapeutic programs existed. Patients were shackled to beds. The facility was described by investigators as caked in soot, with patients lying in their own waste. Okay? At least 121 people died there. More than half died from diseases that were entirely curable. Canton became known as the threats behind the boarding schools. Elders have testified that Native children at federal boarding schools were told that if they misbehaved, they would be sent to Canton. Okay? And everyone understood that Canton was a death sentence. When Commissioner of the Indian Affairs, John Collier, Collier, finally shut the facility down in 1933, when the Federal Reserve supposedly was created, the residents of Canton fought in federal court to keep it open. Not for the patients, for the economy. The asylum was a major employer during the Depression. Today, the building is gone, my people. A municipal golf course was built in its place. The cemetery where 121 men, women, children, and newborns were buried sits near the fifth hole. I keep trying to find the version of this story where the system was broken, where good people built something humane and it went wrong over time, where the failures were accidental, but I could not find it because in Contraosta Contra Asta County in California, 1883, court records show a couple of Portugal both declared insane. A judge noted in his own handwriting that the husband was poor and could not pay. But on the same page, he recorded that the wife held 74 acres of land in her name. Their estate was appraised and sold. Guardians were appointed for their 3 children. The historian Richard Fox found that California had the highest rate of insane commitments in the nation during this period. And a superintendent of one of the state asylums put it plainly. He said the hospitals would continue to be a reciprocal for all forms of human records, regardless of law and justice. He said it himself. He was not ashamed of it. Once you were inside the system, the system could take more than your freedom. In 1927, the Supreme Court decided Buck versus Bell. Carrie Buck was 18 years old. She had been classified as feeble-minded after becoming pregnant. But Carrie Buck was not feeble-minded. She had been raped by her foster parents' nephew. Her foster parents claimed her pregnancy was evidence of promiscuity and they had her committed. The state of Virginia selected her as a test case for its sterilization law. The case went to the Supreme Court. Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes wrote the majority opinion. 8 justices agreed with him. Only 1 dissented. Holmes wrote that society could prevent those who are manifestly unfit from continuing their kind, and he concluded with 5 words that still echo: 3 generations of imbeciles are enough. They're the imbeciles. We have always been free on our land, and we have always been competent handling our own fucking affairs. Carrie Buck was sterilized against her will. She was not told what was being done to her. After 1927, more than 30 states enacted sterilization laws. Over 60,000 Americans were sterilized without their consent from the 20s through the mid-70s. Before the ruling, roughly half of those sterilized were men. Okay, they sterilized the men. After the 67% were women. Many were admitted to institutions specifically to be sterilized, then released. It was so common among poor white women in the South that the procedure acquired a nickname. The Virginia law that authorized Carrie Buck's sterilization directly inspired Nazi Germany's 1933 sterilization program. The Nazis carried out 375,000 forced sterilizations. At the number New Remember trials, defendants cited Buck versus Bell in their defense. The Supreme Court has never formally overruled that decision. It remains on the books in 1887. A 23-year-old journalist named Nellie Billy accepted an assignment for Joseph Pulitzer New York World. She would feign insanity and get herself committed to the woman's lunatic asylum in Blackwell's Island to report on conditions from the inside. She used the name Nellie Brown, checked in to a boarding house, and convinced the judge and multiple doctors that she was mentally ill. Once inside, she immediately dropped the act. She talked normally, she behaved normally, she made no attempt to seem insane, and the staff did not notice. The more sanely she acted, the crazier they believed her to be. During her 10 days inside, Billy found women committed by vindictive husbands. Okay? She found immigrants who spoke no English, trapped in a system they could not navigate. Patients were beaten. They were given ice cold baths in water that was rarely changed. They were forbidden from reading or writing. Her report, published on October the 9th, 1887, triggered a grand jury investigation. The city increased the asylum's budget by $850,000. The asylum closed 7 years later, but Billy's most important observation was not about the conditions. It was about how easy it was to enter and how impossible it was to leave. She proved in 10 days what Elizabeth Packard had spent a lifetime trying to explain. The system was not designed to identify the insane. It was designed to hold whoever was placed inside of it. Pull back far enough, and the individual stories become a single mechanism. The admission list at Western, the culvature laws that erase the woman's legal existence, draw etomania, turning the desire for freedom into a diagnosis, Canton turning native spiritual practice into grounds for commitment, Buck versus Bell turning poverty and victimhood into justification for sterilization. These are not separate failures. They are the same system applied to different populations at different moments. And they're still doing it in this 2026 year. The asylum was a tool for removing inconvenient people. The admission list was the justification, and the beneficiaries were always the same. The husband who wanted his wife's property, the employer who wanted compliant labor, the state that wanted to develop land someone else was already living on, the institution that needed beds filled to justify its own budget and kept its funding flowing. Every time the question answers itself, who benefits? Maybe I am connecting these things, and I have connected these things through research, my people. Maybe the admission list really was just clumsy record keeping by overwhelmed physicians. Maybe was just an outdated legal relic, not a weapon. Maybe Canton was just a poorly run institution, not a prison disguised as a hospital. But if that is true, then why does the pattern repeat with such unsettling precision, my people? Why does every population that cannot fight back end up inside the same kind of walls, under the same kind of authority, losing the same kinds of things: your property, your children. You see, my people, how these niggas will knock your ass off? So let me get back. Basically what I was saying, my people, is that maybe Canton was just a poorly run institution, not a prison designed as a hospital. But if that is true, then why does the pattern repeat with such unsettling precision? Why does every population that cannot fight back end up inside the same kind of walls, under the same kind of authority, losing the same kinds of things, your property, your children, your bodily autonomy, your name on a cemetery marker near a golf course that no one visits? Okay, how many of your own ancestors might have disappeared into a system like this, my people? How many family lines were broken not by death or misfortune, but by someone with authority filling out a form, filling out paperwork to steal your property, to steal your name, your birthright, your legacy, everything about you? And it still goes on right now in 2026. How many inheritances changed hands because a husband or a judge or a senator decided someone was inconvenient? My people, wake up. The list was Western. The list from Western includes 125 reasons, but only ever needed one. Someone with power decided you did not belong. You did not belong. You were inconvenient. They needed to get rid of you because you sit on a land that has gold and silver and all the precious metals. How do we get rid of these women? How do we get rid of these slaves? And that's all they do. Now, the nationality doesn't matter, the color doesn't matter. What matters is that you understand the message that I am giving to you. If you understand and overstand the message, then you know that if women, if you're married to any man nowadays, you may think when you marry a man in the system, you become property of the man. The children are property of the man. Everything that you have is property of the man. So if he wants to disregard of you one day, he can. So my people, I hope that you really got this message. Big up to all my people in the chat. Big up to Flux Cat 463L. Big up to Ifra and Muniv. Big up. So, this message was to all my women out there, to all my people who think they're still African slaves. Yo, this message goes out to all of y'all. Big up to all the women that never got married because they just knew something different within themselves not to get married. Big up to all the women that own their property in their name. Big up to all the women that own their children. Big up to the women that are standing up to the system through paperwork. So big up to all my people, and that I really hope that you can get this message, because this message is real, my people. This message is the realest that you're ever going to hear it. You know what I'm saying? Big up. So on that note, my people, this has been another public announcement from the United States Private. Need some consultations. 407-300-5377. We got that private banking class, the postmaster class. We got that heritage class. We got the secured parties class. We got a bunch of classes that, if you need help with. We got that status correction class based on your jurisdiction. 407-300-5377. Get with the United States Private Enterprise Free State. Stay up, my people. Stay one. Stay strong. And we are out.